Okay, so ready to dive into something pretty crucial today. We're talking about mastering the art of saying no.
Yeah, and not just like a flat out no, but doing it effectively. Whether you're, leading a product team or just trying to manage all the requests that come up in daily life.
Right. And, it can feel tough sometimes, but it's a skill that can make a huge difference.
Mm.
So, for this deep dive, we're going to be looking at a piece from Sam Robertstad. You might know him. He's got that great LinkedIn newsletter, The Product Leader's Playbook.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, really good stuff. And there's a specific article that caught our eye, How I Learned to Say No as a Product Manager Without Slowing Teams Down.
That sounds promising.
Mm,
I mean, who wouldn't want to learn how to say no without causing any, friction or slowing things down?
exactly. So let's unpack it and see what kind of practical advice we can pull out that everyone can use, even if you're not a product manager. Because this is about way more than just like product development.
For sure. I think we've all felt that pressure to say yes, to be helpful, to keep things moving.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, the author, Sam, even talks about how early in his career, he thought more output automatically equaled better performance. Like the more you're doing, the better you are, just like constantly churning out stuff.
Right. You see that a lot. And sometimes it feels like, especially in a fast-paced environment, if you're not saying yes to everything, you're somehow not pulling your weight.
Yeah, that fear of missing out or maybe appearing uncooperative. Have you encountered that kind of thinking, like equating busyness with effectiveness?
Oh, absolutely. It's super common. And it's easy to fall into that trap. It's
Yeah.
almost like a badge of honor to be constantly swamped. But the article really challenges that assumption.
It does. It makes the point that the best product managers, and really anyone who's effective, they're ruthlessly good at prioritizing. So it's not about doing a million things, it's about doing the right things.
Exactly. And that's where the power of no comes in. Because every time you say yes to something, especially something that's not super high priority, you're inherently saying no to something else.
That's a really interesting way to put it. So it's like every yes has an invisible no attached to it.
Right. And the thing is, that no might be to something that could have had a way bigger impact or that's more aligned with your overall goals.
Okay, so how do we start to shift that mindset from that default yes to being more strategic about saying no?
Well, the article gives us some great examples. Like there's this story where Sam's leadership was really pushing for a specific feature. They called it a high visibility feature.
I bet it was one of those things that sounded really cool on the surface, but maybe when you dug a little deeper.
Exactly. And that's what Sam did. Instead of just saying yes, which, can be the easier thing to do in the moment, he started to ask some questions. Like, what problem are we actually trying to solve here?
That's so key. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new idea without really understanding the why behind it.
Right. And Sam also looked at the potential impact of this feature compared to what they'd have to put on hold to actually build it.
The opportunity cost.
Yeah, exactly. And then he asked the most important question. Do we have any data to back this up? Do we actually know that this is something our users want or need?
Okay, so he's not just blindly following orders. He's really evaluating this request critically, which is so important, I think, in any context.
Right. And the thing is, by going through that evaluation process, the team ended up pivoting to a completely different initiative.
Really. So saying no to that initial request led them to something better.
Yeah, that's the really cool part. The new initiative, it delivered more value, users were more engaged with it, and the team actually delivered it faster.
Wow. So it wasn't just about saying no, it was about using that no as an opportunity to find a better path.
Exactly. It's like sometimes that no is actually a redirection towards something even more impactful.
Okay, so we've got this idea of strategic no's, but how do we actually put it into practice? Like, how do we decide when to say no?
Well, Sam has this really helpful framework he uses. It's a 5-factor framework for evaluating requests.
Okay, 5 factors. Let's break those down.
So the first one is strategic fit. Does this request actually align with the broader goals and objectives? Or in a personal sense, does it fit with your own priorities?
Right, so it's not just about whether something sounds cool or interesting, it's about whether it actually moves the needle on what's truly important.
Exactly. Then there's customer impact. Will this thing actually make a difference for your users or customers? Does it solve a real problem they're facing?
Okay, so it's not just about building things for the sake of building them, it's about delivering actual value.
Right. And the third factor is development cost. And this is about more than just money. It's about the effort, the time, the resources it'll take to actually get this thing done.
So weighing the investment against the potential return.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have timeline impact.
Yeah.
So if you say yes to this, what else gets pushed back? Will it delay more important work?
Okay, that's crucial. Because sometimes saying yes to one thing can create a domino effect that throws everything off track.
Absolutely. And then the fifth factor, we've already touched on this a bit, is opportunity cost. What are you not doing because you're saying yes to this? What potential benefits are you missing out on?
Okay, so it's really about looking at the bigger picture, both in terms of what you're gaining and what you're potentially giving up.
Precisely. And what's really great about this framework is it's not like a rigid checklist where if something doesn't tick all the boxes, it's an automatic no.
Right. It's more about having a way to evaluate requests thoughtfully and strategically.
Exactly. And it can even help guide the conversation with the person making the request, maybe towards a better solution or a more focused approach.
So it's not just about shutting down ideas, it's about channeling them more effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about when to say no, but how do we actually say it? Like, what are some ways to decline a request without, burning bridges or coming across as negative?
Well, the article has some really helpful phrases for that too. Like one of them is, let's validate first. So if there's not a lot of data or evidence to support the request, you can suggest testing it out first.
Oh, I like that. It's not a flat out no, but it's a way to say, let's gather some information before we commit to this.
Right. And it shifts the focus to being data-driven, which is always a good thing. Another phrase you can use is, let's compare priorities.
Hmm. So instead of just saying no, you're opening up a discussion about what's most important right now.
Exactly. It helps everyone get on the same page about what's truly critical. And then if the request is really big or complex, you can say, let's phase it.
So break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Yeah, that way you're not saying no to the whole idea, but you're suggesting a more strategic approach.
Yeah.
And it also allows you to test things out along the way and make adjustments as needed.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. It's about being collaborative and finding ways to move forward, even if it's not with the original request exactly as it was presented.
Right. And then there's one more phrase that's really powerful. Let's align on goals.
So, connecting the request back to the bigger picture.
Exactly. And sometimes by doing that, the person making the request might realize themselves that it's not as high priority as they initially thought.
So it's about helping them see the request within a larger context.
Yeah, and empowering them to kind of self-evaluate and maybe even come up with a different solution that's more aligned.
Okay, so we've got these great tactics for saying no effectively. But to really make this work, there are some underlying principles we need to keep in mind, right?
Absolutely. The article highlights 3 key principles.
Okay, hit me with them.
The first one is use data to drive decisions. So, whenever possible, base your decisions on evidence and insights, not just gut feelings or opinions.
Right, because data can help you make more objective and defensible choices. And it also ties back to that let's validate first tactic.
Exactly. Then there's framing the opportunity cost. So when you do have to say no, don't just say it and leave it at that. Take a moment to explain what you'd have to deprioritize in order to say yes.
Oh, I see. So you're not just saying no, you're explaining the why behind the no.
And it helps people understand that it's not a personal rejection, it's a strategic decision.
Okay, makes sense. And what's the third principle?
The third one is maintaining roadmap discipline. So this means having a clear and focused roadmap that everyone is aligned on. And then when a new request comes in, you can evaluate it against that roadmap.
Right, because if you don't have a clear roadmap, it's easy to get pulled in a million different directions.
Exactly. And a good roadmap helps you stay focused on what's most important.
Okay, so taking all of this together, the key takeaway seems to be that it's not about doing more, it's about doing what matters most.
Yeah, absolutely. And that requires having the courage and the skill to say no strategically.
Well said. So, to wrap up our deep dive today, we explored the power of no and how it can actually lead to faster progress and better outcomes. We looked at Sam Robertstad's 5-factor framework for evaluating requests and those practical phrases for declining them gracefully.
Right. And we also talked about the importance of using data, framing opportunity cost, and maintaining roadmap discipline.
So as you go about your day, your week, think about a time when you felt pressured to say yes. Maybe it was at work, maybe it was in your personal life.
And looking back now, knowing what you know about opportunity cost and strategic alignment, do you think there might have been a more impactful no in that situation? How could you use the frameworks and tactics we discussed today to navigate those tricky situations more effectively in the future?
Some great food for thought. All right, that's it for today's deep dive. See you next time.